Welcome back, everybody, to another Sunday market outlook. Obviously, the purpose of these outlooks is to give everybody a head start over the week, as if preparation is key. So obviously, creating a plan over the weekend, it's a good exercise, don't get me wrong, but kind of get bogged down with trying to stick to a plan in a market or an environment that is completely dynamic. Okay, I don't want to say random, because there are patterns to it, but there is a lot of chaos and there is a lot of randomness. And so planning, the exercise of planning, going through all the considerations, not all, like this is not supposed to be some kind of triathlon. It's really just supposed to be, what are the reminders for the week? What do I need to keep in mind first and foremost for my trading so that I can come out profitable? Did I do the right thing last week? If so, what was it? And let me continue to do that. If there were some mistakes made, you have to accurately identify the mistake. Biggest mistake I see today is traders misidentifying what went wrong and then fixing the wrong thing. And then the results just get worse and worse. So if there is something that you need to fix, take some time over the weekend and go through those considerations. Don't bog yourself down or tie yourself down to some, this sort of like goal or plan or something that you're trying to hit. Instead, set guidelines for yourself so you can trade freely, but you can still be within the bounds of a responsible system. Put a one in the chat if that makes sense. Purpose of this call, we're going to go through some quick reminders for you guys. Actually, matter of fact, we'll just start off with the market news. So we're going to do economic releases for this week, what to watch out for, speed bumps, milestones. We're going to go through the trades of the week. I got a few setups for you guys, and so we'll go through those together. And I'll kind of do some higher time frame updates. Where are we in the market? Where is the stock market, crypto, gold, maybe a few other currencies? Where are we at? I'll give you guys an update on the dollar as well. And then we're going to go through market news, just general market news. We put out 2 articles today. So we're going to be dropping these every single day as like a briefing so that you guys can stay informed. Over time, I'm going to start to include a little bit more info in these articles. We'll be including, let's say, what some of the biggest institutions are saying. Maybe I'll kind of call around to some friends I have at these capital management firms and be able to get their perspective about, are they risk on, risk off, kind of what their timelines are looking like. And I can include some more meat in the overall context of these. But I tried to keep them short and sweet because, guys, this is not supposed to be not a distraction, but it's not supposed to overwhelm you to the point where now you're focusing on this instead of your trading. This is supposed to be an accessory. You can add context, you can add more color to your understanding of what's going on, and it ideally helps you build confidence in your bias. So instead of second guessing whether the market's bullish or bearish or what you should be doing or which direction the market might go, you're going to be a little bit more confident that the market trend that you're following is the correct one, regardless of short-term candles. Like sometimes the market starts bleeding on a 1 hour or like just on a random day, and then everybody starts panicking and forgets the higher time frame trend. And so in order to keep that confidence, that cool, that sort of like, how is that person so cool when they're trading? Number one, experience is a big key. But number two, it comes down to preparation, and it comes down to like big picture thinking. So look at that. We're going to look at the higher time frames. We're going to look at some of these economic events, and it should give you enough context here to navigate, the upcoming couple of weeks. Now, subscribe to our newsletter so you guys can get these updates in real time. You guys can get notified. The link is in the description below on YouTube, and we'll also post it in the YouTube chats. Okay. So with that being said, let's get right to it. Chartaddicts members, and I guess everybody on YouTube as well, put one thing in the chats. It doesn't have to be a long, it can be like 10 words or less, but biggest focuses for this week for you personally. Now, CA members, I'm not going to read yours. I'm not going to like say your name out loud on the YouTube, whatever. So you guys can feel comfortable just sort of saying something. It doesn't have to be like the most personal thing, but make it something accurate. This exercise isn't really for me. It's more for you guys. Just 10 seconds of writing something down and even thinking about what is my number one consideration this week for my performance. Like, what is the number one thing that I got to prioritize? Is it risk management, trailing? Is it following the plan? Is it sticking to my risk management so I don't keep changing my lot size? Is it not trading on Fridays and giving back the money? What is the number one focus? And hopefully even this question starts to get the machine working to get you guys to start, maybe you haven't even considered it. What is my number one thing? Maybe I don't even know what that is. And hopefully this is that wake up call. So put 10 words or less, biggest focuses for the week for yourself personally. And I'm not going to read your names next to them, but I will read them out loud because ideally it can help somebody else who's dealing with the same exact thing. So while you guys write that, I'm going to play our Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, and kind of his perspective on the China talks. He didn't say much because obviously he was trying to save, like he didn't want to step on Besant and the trade team's toes by kind of getting ahead and kind of airing out what just happened. So it's not that, what does it say? Like there ain't much in there, but it's still goods to kind of get the perspectives from both sides.
Joining us now, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. Welcome to Fox News Sunday.
Welcome and happy Mother's Day to everybody watching, and a special happy Mother's Day
Oh, and happy Mother's Day to everybody.
to my beautiful wife.
Yes, appropriate way to start. Now let's dig into the business of the day, which is the talks in Switzerland with us and China. You have said, listen, this is going to take potentially dozens of talks. What can you tell us about managing expectations on a timeline when something could come together?
Secretary Bessent has made it clear one of his objectives is to de-escalate. 145% and 125% are really, those are kind of tariffs where you're not trading with each other. So he's there to see if we can reset the conversation, and he's at it right now. So I'm going to leave it to him of how he deals with it. But that's the objective, to de-escalate.
Well, the Wall Street Journal has said, too, that in our talks with other countries, and I know you're involved in many of getting these deals, trying to get them together, that part of it has been about pressuring these other countries when it comes to China. Here's what the Wall Street Journal reported. The idea is to extract commitments from U.S. trading partners to isolate China's economy in exchange for reductions in trade and tariff barriers imposed by the White House. The idea being not to let China flood these other countries with their products or to relocate things to these areas where they would avoid U.S. tariffs. Are those part of your conversations, those themes?
No. That's, again, this fake news. I mean, we are focused on Americans, right? That President Trump's idea is to bring the golden age back to America, to reshore manufacturing, to build here, to have those people who build here not pay any tariffs. And if you want to build overseas, okay, you'll pay tariffs and you'll be less competitive in America, so build here. I mean, that's the idea. Open your markets if you want to continue to to not bring things home to America. Open your markets, let our exporters sell to you, finally get some fair trade, and let's bring lots of manufacturing back to America. But we are not, under any circumstances, focused on China when we're talking to other countries. When we're talking to China, of course, our trade team is focused on China. But when we talk to other countries, there was no conversation in the UK or India or Japan or any of these other countries about China. Leave China alone. We are trying to grow America.
Okay, so you mentioned the UK deal, a big feather in the cap of the administration. You were right there with the president as he's making this announcement. And it begs the question now about that 10% tariff. Is that going to be the baseline? Here's what the president said Friday.
But basically, you have a baseline of a minimum of 10%. And some of them will be much higher, 40%, 50%, 60%, as they've been doing to us over the years.
So those numbers may sound really good to China if you're talking about 145 or 80%, but how are those numbers landing with the other folks you're negotiating with?
So you saw on Liberation Day, the president put out a whole series of tariff rates. And then the objective is to bring manufacturing back to America and also lower those rates. So those countries, each of those countries can open their markets, make a more fair trading deal with America, allow Americans to export to their country. Finally, in a way, you saw in the UK, we opened their market, $5 billion of exports. Many of these countries will be, because they have bigger economies, even bigger. And our idea is have the Americans be able to export to those countries, grow America, right? Ranchers, produce, vegetables, machinery, ethanol, things like that, sell to those countries, lower their tariff rate, and then bring manufacturing back to America. So I think we're very, very focused on America's golden age coming. We're going to make trade more fair, and it's going to work brilliantly for Americans, both if you make it here, there's no tariff, and we can sell much, much more fairly everywhere in the world.
So Americans are watching and hoping for those long-term benefits, but our polling shows they're pretty skeptical at this point. 72% tell us they think tariffs are going to make the things they pay for right now more expensive. And a majority of them think that tariffs are actually hurting our economy. I mean, how do you work against that perception with messaging while people wait in the interim for something to happen?
You just do trade deals, right? Like, look at the UK deal. Right? Just look at that deal. It opens the UK market for the first time to $5 billion of exports. I mean, go talk to a beef rancher right now or a corn farmer right now. They are ecstatic. They've never been allowed into the UK market, and now they'll be allowed. So each of these countries, we're going to break open their non-tariff trading barriers, get our people the ability to export there. That's going to be great. We're going to have huge jobs in manufacturing. You've heard the president talk about trillions and trillions of factories being built in America. Those are construction jobs starting now, and then those products will not have tariffs on them. So I just completely disagree. What you're going to see is prices are going to stay stable once this policy is done. You got to give the president a chance to run it. But over the next 3 months, this policy is going to show trade deal after trade deal, opening markets, reshoring manufacturing, and no tariff charged if you make it in America.
Okay, so let's talk about in the interim, because we've got reports out on the West Coast that there are hundreds of dock workers now out of work as those ships are not coming in, the ripple effect there. Hitting the trucking industry and others as well. One union official out there says it's beginning to manifest itself as real loss of jobs and income from our members. So what do you say to those American workers?
I say to those American workers, Scott Bessent is in Geneva right now talking to his counterparties in China, right? Remember, this is just a China problem right now, right? We have 145% tariff. They have 125% tariff. Those tariffs are too high to do business. But that's why they're talking right now. The rest of the world is 10%. So don't overdo it. The rest of the world is 10%. They're sending their goods here, as the president has said time and time again. We are the consumer of the world. Everybody wants to sell their goods here, so they need to do business with America. And we're using the power of our economy to open their economy to our exporters. So that is happening right now. Yes, Scott Bessent is in Geneva talking to his counterparties right now. And let's see what happens. But the president said last night he was very optimistic and very positive. So you should be very optimistic and positive because the president truthed it out. And I rely on the president.
Okay, well, no surprise to you. I don't think that the Washington Post is not among your biggest fans. Here's what they say. Lutnick's economically incoherent and contradictory commentary. They say economists agree that tariffs are paid by importers, such as U.S. companies, which in turn pass on most or all of the cost to consumers or producers. Here's how Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer puts it.
President Trump's trade war is economic arson on our main streets, and these folks are getting scorched.
All right. If I could care. Actually, let me see what Lutnick says.
He didn't vote for you. I don't think you guys are probably besties. Is there any room, though, to work with Democrats on some of these issues?
I don't think so. I mean, I remember Chuck Schumer holding a can of Corona when the tariff came out. I mean, imagine doing that and not holding a can of American-made Coors. I mean, why? Why would you hold up a Mexican can and say, we support Mexican production first? It's America first. How about we support American production first? Let's bring production to America. Let's employ Americans. That's sort of a key thing. Let's employ Americans. Let's build America. No tariffs on American goods. And then if you want to sell to America, okay, you pay a tariff that makes the American goods more competitive. But we know from experience from Trump's first term that the consumers don't pay for the tariffs. They need the products coming in. They need to compete in America. So they've got to cut their price. They've got to cut their margins, and they've got to compete here. So this concept that just prices go up, you'll buy American goods, and to be competitive, the foreigners will have to cut their price. You saw it with the Asians. They've already announced they're not raising their prices on their cars that are coming in, even though there's a tariff. It proves the point. Don't buy into these economists who are just not in the real world, right? Look at the UK deal. It is working.
Well, the proof will be in the pudding. American workers and consumers are watching closely. Secretary Lutnick, we wish you the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy Mother's Day, everybody.
Hi, Winner Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor.
All right. No one cares. Welcome back, people. Okay, so that's cool that in such a short amount of time, just through open dialogue and actually talking to the other side, we've been able to get the preliminary steps to big questions like Israel, Gaza, Ukraine, Russia, and now this China question that has been looming over. And the previous administration, I think, was just so intimidated by that. They were just like, if we just leave them alone, then we can just keep, business as usual and We're not going to, ruffle any feathers, because I just don't think they knew how to navigate that complicated of a thing with China. And probably a lot of them were also doing business there or had connections there. And so they just did not want to ruffle the feathers. But China was actively working against the hegemony of the United States the whole time, buying up key mineral resources and getting countries in debt for 99 years as part of the Belt and Road Initiative by giving them a loan in the short term for billions and taking their mineral resources in the back end or their shipping ports or their airports or something. And they've been actively taking over the chessboard. And I think now we've had this sort of come to light moment where America has made it very clear to China what our objectives are. And based on what Dustin said, it seems like we have a mutual interest here. It seems like both sides understand, like, we're trying to keep the show rolling. Both of our economies want to keep growing, and we want to keep momentum in this like year over year GDP growth. No side can benefit from like an extended trade war here. And I think that that's just like a very straightforward thing. And both sides are like, all right, we're both looking out for our own interests. And here's our non-negotiables. And now we're just, starting to get the preliminary steps. Now, this isn't like this isn't like a thing where we have all of the details lined up, because I think everyone's looking for some kind of concise outline of what we're going to get, what we're going to give. And this is not like the graphic that Trump posted about the UK the other day, which we're going to talk about later, by the way, because I have some serious doubts about who's winning in that UK-US deal. But this China thing, this is going to take a lot of different meetings. There's going to be the geopolitical questions. There's going to be the economic questions. There's going to be this open market question where we previously allowed Chinese companies to be listed on our stock exchanges, but obviously no US companies can be listed on a Chinese stock exchange. And so there's going to be like this question of reciprocity, open market access in general. And if China refuses to budge on certain things, this could actually go south very quick. So for example, like if we make a condition that China has to open up their stock markets or their capital markets to US investors, and as a function of us allowing them here, and they say no. So now as part of like, you have to be serious in negotiations, and you have to let them know that there are repercussions to every decision made in this deal. What if the US just kicks out all the Chinese companies? They've already started. A lot of Chinese companies had been kicked off the stock exchange if they refused to get audited through the GAAP accounting principles, which is kind of like the generally accepted accounting principles that everybody uses. And they were just kind of like doing their own thing on our stock markets, when US companies have to follow everything by the book, due diligence all the way through. So in my honest opinion, if these things start to escalate, then there are a lot of chips on this table that can still get moved, such as $800 billion of Chinese capital in our stock market, such as China holding a large amount of US bonds and US stocks that they can sell and crash our shit. And so this is kind of like, we're stepping on eggshells. Now, I've been looking way more into the China story, and I don't think they're in the right economic situation right now to be starting a trade war, or, I mean, really just, they're looking at like a 2008 global financial crisis level like event over there between their real estate market, between their capital markets, their currency. And now this trade war, if this thing persists for more than like 2-3 weeks, it's going to have some serious repercussions. So anyways, let's go through the economic calendar, and then we're going to go through the trades of the week. I got 3 trade ideas for you guys that I haven't really picked out yet. So I guess this is going to be fun for you guys to see how I start the week off and basically start on the higher time frames, find trade ideas. We're going to talk about the China deal a little bit more in depth in just a second. India, Pakistan, there was rockets sent both sides. There was attacks. They're both nuclear superpowers. India is the 6th largest nuclear superpower in the world. Pakistan is number 7. Like, they both have damn near the same amount of nukes. It only takes one, but they got a lot. Okay, so tensions got hot. The Trump administration made a call from across the Pacific or the Atlantic, whichever way you want to spin it, and they ended that ceasefire from thousands of miles away. This is what I think Trump should really try to stick to, not the world police, but not even the world referee, but sort of just like the voice of reason. And I think that we've seen de-escalations in India, Pakistan. We'll talk about that as well. An honest look at the UK and USA trade deal, because I have questions about that. If you guys find value in this live stream, especially when we get to the trading part, make sure to check out the link in the description. We have a free webinar every Wednesday, free education. So if you guys are saying that you don't have enough money for courses, or there's no resources out there with real info, you found it. Let's get into the weekly news events. This is all on the Chartaddicts website. Full article is in the description below. Pretty busy week. We have CPI. I've kind of outlined here, highlighted some of the most important ones. CPI, PPI, core retail sales. Fed Powell is speaking on Thursday. And then we have consumer sentiment on Friday. So right now, what is the biggest question in economics, or just in markets in general? It's this trade tariffs and its impact on costs, its impact on people's ability to buy stuff. And so every single one of the data releases this week has to do directly with the cost of stuff and people buying stuff. Okay, so with CPI, this is going to be like the inflation, which is either the change in the price of goods or the rise in the price of goods, depending on how this comes out. Our price is still going up. Now, we've looked at specific consumer goods on this stream before, things like household, like food, pantry items, etc. And we've seen a downward trend in a lot of those consumer goods. This is going to be more of like a headline number. It's going to create some ruckus, but I don't think it's going to be a market mover the way that some people think it is. Now, PPI usually takes a back seat because it's such an early indicator that folks don't really like. It's not really as directly relevant. But right now, because tariffs are such a big topic, it's kind of taking a front seat because the price of goods that producers are paying, PPI is like CPI, it's the consumer price index, but for producers. And so if producers are paying more for goods, then consumers are going to end up paying that kind of end cost. It's like the cost of goods for consumers goes up. And so right now, because bringing stuff into the US has become so expensive, PPI is going to be a very good measure to see if producers are actually absorbing this cost of these tariffs or if it's going to get passed on to the consumers. We'll see that in the CPI and the PPI number. So I'll give you guys like a simplified version of this. If the cost of goods for consumers is going down, but the PPI is going up, it means that the people who are importing all these materials to the US are the ones taking the hit. They're the ones paying the tariff because the cost of producing these materials is going up, but we're not seeing the change in prices yet. Now, on the other hand, if consumer price index goes up, but PPI stays the same or goes down, it means that all of these companies are passing on these tariff costs on to us. The cost of stuff went up because they're trying to just charge us more so they can pay off this tariff, expense that they just incurred. I put a 1 in the chat if this makes sense. PPI, CPI, it all just seems like a bunch of random releases and they kind of just come out every month and whatever. But there's a story being told here. And if you can follow the numbers, you don't really need to trust the analysis of like mainstream media, which is all kind of rigged, to be able to make a decision. Like trading is a game of, can you see through the noise? Because there is a lot of it. And if you can't make your own judgments and you can't build your own story and you can't build your own perspective, you'll never have real confidence and you'll never be able to, make money. Because you have to be like in that 5% of people that's looking at things differently. If everyone's losing, then you got to be seeing the markets different than everybody else. And real confidence comes from context and obviously experience. All right, so if you guys want to read the full article, this is in the link in the description. That's the news releases for the week. Fed Chair Powell speaking. It's not like a major event that he's speaking at, but typically Jerome Powell is a lot more candid and honest when he's speaking at these smaller events, like if it's at a school or if it's at like an economic event or if it's at some like global economic empowerment of like the indigenous aborigines or whatever the fuck. He's just sitting there, he's being a lot more honest. And so I'm looking forward to this, just kind of seeing his perspective on not raising rates and the pressure he's getting from the Trump administration. And then preliminary consumer sentiment is like, do we want to buy more stuff or not? Do we feel like, more money is going to come in? Am I optimistic? Or am I starting to get kind of that feeling and I'm going to spend less and kind of tighten my belt? Consumer sentiment, early indicator for overall GDP and overall just market health, economic health. We'll be looking into that as well. Click the link in the description, people, if you guys want to read the full articles, and make sure to subscribe. So when you go to that link in the description, you'll be taken to all the articles, weekly, etc. Hit the subscribe to our newsletter right here to get these market updates live when they come out. So let's go through the top 3 trades of the week. So first things first, we have the NASDAQ 100. We'll start with US equities. This is what I trade like exclusively. And so this is really the only thing that I'm focused on, but we'll cover some other markets as well, just to make sure that we can have a full spectrum view here. Now, because I really haven't done much analysis over the weekend, what I'm going to do is, by the way, I read all your messages in the Zoom call about the things that you guys want to focus on for this week. I'm proud of you. We're getting specific here. And even though like, obviously these are short statements, I think you guys are starting to get it or have like already get it. Anyways, because I haven't done much analysis over the weekend, I'm going to actually have to go on the higher time frames and mark up these charts. So instead of me kind of explaining stuff, it's a lot of work, I'm going to play probably 1 or 2 more reaction videos or just live videos from the Chinese. I want to hear the Chinese perspective. Now, this is translated between Chinese, and then there's a translator that kind of goes in between it. It's a little difficult to watch, but I want to remind you guys, how do I say this nicely? Don't be a bitch, all right? Now, very abrasive. Roy, where are you going with this? Here's where I'm going with this. Like the reason that these like 900 people are watching this and like this has 1,000 views and our stream is, X amount of views or whatever, is because people cannot sit through real value because it's not sexy, right? I could do something really fun. Free giveaway, 1 free FX Summit ticket for a question, get everybody engaged. Incredible. I could do reaction videos to like the forex influencers and be like, you know, reacting to so-and-so's video, right? The thing is like the real information, the stuff that you guys need to watch or read in order to get like an accurate perspective, it's not sexy. It's gonna be boring. It's gonna be hard to watch sometimes. Now, ChatGPT makes it easier. You feed the link to ChatGPT or the transcript, say, you know, summarize this for me like I used to eat glue, right? Just for example, that's a real prompt for you guys. I don't give out this kind of information everywhere. So that's inside baseball right there. Okay, so we're going to watch this. That was I had to basically give you guys like a disclaimer because this shit's going to be a little bit hard to listen to. But I'm going to interject every once in a while. I will not roast the Chinese delegation. No, not doing that. You guys got to keep me accountable. We'll see. No promises. I'm going to try my best.
各位记者朋友们，大家晚上好。5月10日至5月11日，我作为中美经贸中方牵头人，以美国财政部部长贝森特先生和贸易代表特里尔大使共同举行了中美经贸高层会谈。
Friends from the press, good evening. On the 10th and 11th of May, as the Chinese lead person on China-US trade and economic affairs, I held a high-level meeting with the U.S. lead persons, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and USTR Ambassador Jamison Greer.
双方就彼此关心的经贸问题开展了深入交流，会谈氛围呢是坦诚的、深入的、具有建设性的，取得了实质性的进展，达成了重要的共识。
The two sides held in-depth exchanges on trade and economic issues of their respective concern. The atmosphere of the meeting was candid, in-depth, and constructive. The meeting achieved substantial progress and reached important consensus.
双方一致同意建立中美经贸磋商机制，明确双方牵头人就各自关切的经贸问题开展进一步的磋商。中美双方将尽快敲定有关的细节，并且将于5月12日发布会谈达成的联合声明。
The two sides agreed on establishing a consultation mechanism for trade and economic issues, identify the lead persons on each side, and will carry on further consultations relating to trade and economic issues of their respective concerns. The two sides will finalize relevant details as soon as possible and will issue a joint statement that was reached at the meeting on the 12th of May.
我想借此机会，要特别感谢瑞士政府作为东道主，对本次中美经贸高层会谈提供的大力支持和热情的接待。同时，美方同事专业勤勉，也令人印象深刻。
I would like to take this opportunity to give our special thanks to the Swiss government, who is our host this time, for their enormous support and warm hospitality. At the same time, our American colleagues' professionalism and diligence was also impressive.
3个多月来，由美方挑起的贸易战，全球关注。
That Ukraine and Russia will reach a ceasefire. Welcome back, everyone. President Donald Trump is expressing doubt that Ukraine and Russia will reach a ceasefire deal. He's now encouraging the two nations to meet in Turkey this week. As CBS News' Willie James Inman tells us, this comes as the president prepares for a trip to the Middle East.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent described day 2 of the trade talks between the United States and China as productive and said more details will be released Monday. The weekend talks in Switzerland mark the first significant discussions between the two nations since President Trump imposed a minimum tariff of 145% on Chinese goods, and China responded with its own tariff hikes. In other international news, President Trump expressed doubt Sunday on Truth Social that Ukraine will reach a ceasefire deal with Russia, noting President Putin of Russia doesn't want to have a ceasefire agreement with Ukraine, but rather wants to meet on Thursday in Turkey to negotiate a possible end to the bloodbath. The president's post comes just 2 weeks after he sat down with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the Vatican to discuss the war. On Sunday, Zelensky responded cautiously to Russia's offer of direct talks, calling it a positive sign, but insisting that Putin must agree to an immediate ceasefire first. And in domestic news, state governors are weighing in on the deportation debate on Sunday's Face the Nation.
What was that? Let's see this.
In any normal world, it would dominate headlines for weeks. Donald Trump is poised to accept a $400 million gift from Qatar in the form of a luxury Boeing 747 jumbo jet, a plane so opulent it's known as a palace in the sky. And a kicker, after using it as Air Force One during his presidency, ownership is going to be transferred to the Trump Presidential Library Foundation before he leaves office. Simply put, a foreign government is giving the President of the United States a personal gift worth $400 million. This isn't some state gift that's going to remain government property. This is a gift that will ultimately become Donald Trump's personal property through his Presidential Library Foundation. This is quite literally the definition of foreign influence buying. And the timing here could not be more perfect, because it was just days ago that Donald Trump's press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, had a full-blown fainting spell at the prospect of Donald Trump doing anything for his own personal benefit.
I think it's frankly ridiculous that anyone in this room would even suggest that President Trump is doing anything for his own benefit. He left a life of luxury and a life of running a very successful real estate empire for public service, not just once, but twice. And again, the American public reelected him back to this White House because they trust he acts in the best interest of our country and putting the American public first. This is a president who has actually lost money for being president of the United States. I don't remember these same type of questions being asked of my predecessor about a career politician who was clearly profiting off of this office. That is not what President Trump does, and this White House holds ourselves to the highest of ethical standards.
Quote, I think it's frankly ridiculous that anyone in this room would even suggest that President Trump is doing anything for his own benefit. Those were her exact words. Who wants to tell Leavitt that accepting a $400 million luxury jet from a foreign government that will eventually become your boss's personal property is the definition of doing something for his own personal benefit?
All right, man.
I'm Austin Westfall. We're getting some breaking news in. President Trump saying that he plans to sign an executive order to cut prescription drug prices by mandating that the U.S. pay the same price for drugs as whichever country pays the lowest price in the world. He put a lengthy statement on Truth Social. Here's what the statement says. I believe we have the entire thing to show. And there it is. That's the wall of text. For many years, he says.
All right, my bad that took me so long. I was kind of distracted back and forth trying to find, because I just got a text that there was some breaking news with Trump, and I was just trying to figure out if it was market related or what. Now, here's what I'm seeing on the higher time frames. Let's kind of just go through this real quick. So if we zoom back out, since 2022, since they announced quantitative tightening, and then the markets kind of reacted with this big drop right here, ever since the markets, the Fed announced that they were going to pause quantitative easing or quantitative tightening. So they were just going to hold rates the same, no more going up. Markets kind of rallied, and they were rallying in anticipation of some rate cuts. And the Fed kind of threw us scraps, and they gave us just enough to basically like give people hope that the rates are going to eventually come down. And so it was kind of more of like throwing us a bone as opposed to like genuinely moving rates down. But anyways, we've been in a bullish trend since. And then starting this year, basically when Trump took office, we had a massive sell-off, kind of what I see here as an obvious correction. Like this was a bearish correction. It was not a bear market. Now, Trump, before he got into office, announced a bunch of policies like tariffs and trade barriers between us and kind of our closest allies. And then there was a lot of changes to the tax policy, but because of the ambiguity, they call this in the Trump administration on their strategic team, they call it strategic ambiguity. And that this is, I'm pretty sure, a military term where you just don't let anyone know, especially the folks you're negotiating with, what you want, what you're willing to negotiate and settle for, and what your end game is. Because then they're going to start to create these narratives in their head. They're usually a lot more like elaborate than what you're actually doing. It kind of just psychs people out. All right. So we kind of got to this place here where Trump is changing the board and there's not a lot of clarity. There's ambiguity. And then the market sold off as a reaction to basically just having that uncertainty. Now, ever since there's been more certainty, this is where April 2nd, you guys can see here, is when Liberation Day went into effect, which is this kind of like policy of the Trump administration to clear up all of our trade, all of our trade partnerships, and to basically just kind of look at the board and say, we have a $1.2 trillion trade deficit where we're importing way more than we're exporting. And you can't be spending more than you're bringing in just because you have the power of the printing press and you can kind of issue yourself debt and do this whole scheme. We got to make ourselves profitable. And so we have a businessman in office that's really doing that. So now, because there's been some clarity, 10% all across the board, April 2nd is when Liberation Day went into effect. And you guys have seen a rally ever since. Now we're getting up to these highs from back in kind of like a late March. And so this double top formation right here, I was pretty optimistic about taking this trade at the market open. But of course, if we scroll down to the 1 hour or the 4 hour, we'll notice that the market opened with a massive gap. Now, obviously, there's the biggest news of all time, which is China and the US have finally sat down for the first preliminary like icebreaker meeting in Switzerland. And both sides are saying it's positive, optimistic, and everyone's hailing it as like a big step forward, small step for negotiations and a giant step for trade kind. And so the markets obviously were getting bought up after hours over the weekends. So if you want to go to a major exchange like the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange, there's limitations on the hours of when you can trade. So the weekends are closed. Now, if you're buying private, if you're buying stocks privately, or if you're a company that's issuing internal stock, or if there's foreign, let's just say foreign, not foreign governments, but foreign countries that allow stock market trading, and there's exchanges there that allow trading over the weekends, there's a lot of volume being bought and sold, and we just don't have an update. So over the weekend, all of that trading data and all that volume kind of gets reflected at the market open when they're all aggregated. And this is what we see. Now, I'm pretty confident that we end up filling this gap back to the downside. And so I'm not currently in this trade. What I'd like to see is this, and I'm going to show you guys a smaller time frame entry here in just a second. Here's the previous high. The market is creating some momentum to the upside now, probably because a lot of people are buying at the market open. They're like, oh my God, double top, higher time frame, China, trade, sell. And so I can't even imagine how many orders were sitting at the open price. And then I think that the market, and rightfully so, is going to kick out a lot of people out of these early trades. And so what I'd like to see is the market kind of extend itself during Tokyo and during London, right? Just kind of play up here. Keep making people think it's going to come back down or go back up. Regardless, it's going to play inside that range. And then hopefully either New York session or early, like pre-New York, we're going to get this move back to the downside. I will, and I don't normally do this, which is enter sell stops. But this is the one time where I'm not going to enter a sell stop. I'm going to enter a market order. But when the market breaks back under, right? I maybe, if it's looking good tomorrow morning, I'll look at the range and I'll try to short the top of the range instead, get a wick entry. But I think that the most straightforward move here is just waiting for the market to give us the information. So sellers are back in control. Look for a retest, 61% of this range, and then short it all the way through. Once we break back under this 4 hour 88.6, let me show you guys this fib right here. We got a pretty good amount of room to the downside. And so if you just look at market structure, it's really as easy as aiming for each of these areas of support and using them as your anchor for the higher low. Members, you guys know what that means. Okay, so we got lows all the way through. So the target would be here, then here, then here, and then maybe even down here, but probably not. Okay, put a 1 in the chat if that makes sense. I'll show you guys the 30-minute time frame. This is probably the only trade I'll cover for NAS right now, and then obviously, I'll show you guys probably crypto and gold. Keep it spicy. I know you guys like that. Those high risk, high volatility, fucking drain your whole bank account. Like lose all your money in one trade assets. I know you guys are always asking, yo, can you look at US 30 leveraged 15,000X? I'm like, dog, what the fuck is wrong with y'all, man? They're like, oh no, we like pain. All right, smaller time frame, pretty straightforward here. I want to see an extension during the overnight sessions. And then if we get a double top, that'd be beautiful. We probably get duck, goose. So we have a resistance form, liquidity grab at the market open, and then break back under. We'll break back inside of this gap. This is the gap that we need to fill, okay? So we'll break back inside the gap, retest very sharply at the market open, and then continue to drop so that we can fill that gap. So if it closes under inside of this gap area, I'm going to wait for this lower high and just short it, right at this daily zone. Beautiful. Can't get any better. If for some reason it comes down wicks and then ends up closing above, then what'll happen is probably double bottom and continuation. Okay. So we'll cross that bridge when we get there. And that's basically tomorrow morning. All right. There seems to be gaps on every instrument. Let's take a look at the DXY. Now the DXY has one thing that's different than everything else in markets, than every other asset in the world. And no, it's not just because it's the world's reserve currency. No, it's because this has the super secret magnet indicator, the most successful, accurate, undisputed indicator of all time. We've been tracking the DXY here with the same markup since basically 2022. Now, members, duck, goose. Okay, beautiful. Doesn't get any easier, right? Double bottom break. Okay, let's take a look here. Duck. What is this, people? So if you guys had to bet $1 million, I gave you $1 million. I was like, you can only use it to take a trade. You have to put it all on one trade. If you blow it all, it's gone. If you win, you get to keep the $1 million. I get to keep the rest. Would you guys buy or sell the DXY? And I don't mean right at this price, but would you guys be bearish or bullish? Let me get a quick read on this. I gave you $1 million. Said you can't, no strip clubs. No. I said you can use this, right? Can't use it to go buy Fortnite skins. No. What you can do is put it on one trade, all in. You can't split it up. You can't, You either pick a direction, hold it. You got unlimited capital here. Now, if you win, you get to keep the milli. And if you lose, it's all gone. Poof. And it's gone. Bullish, bearish. Members, we got the super secret magnet indicator. Can't beat it, can't touch it, can't fight it. Undisputed, undefeated. Can't find it anywhere but the Chartaddicts live stream. So obviously you guys are cheating because you have the answer to the test. Let me see what the YouTube people are saying. Now I'm going to go ahead and assume that there's some kind of lag on the YouTube, so we'll let that slide. But basically, this is what I'm seeing. Duck, goose on the higher time frames. We're looking for some kind of double bottom and push back up. I don't think we're going to push all the way up. I think that the Trump administration, number one, it wants to keep the dollar stable, but it also wants a bit of a weaker dollar so that we can kind of even out some of the currency manipulation that's been happening with some of our trade partners, where they're manipulating their currency artificially and intentionally to get preferential purchasing power in a lot of these deals and a lot of these trades between the two countries. And so I think that the Trump administration wants a weak dollar, but you just can't avoid that elephant in the room. The elephant in the room when it comes to markets, and we talk to forex traders and analysts and econ, the thing that nobody wants to say is everybody wants dollars. And we had a great podcast with Brent Johnson, the person who coined the term dollar milkshake theory, which is this idea that everything is in dollars. All debt in the world is in dollars. So even if you want to get rid of the debt and pay it all off and go to another currency, you still got to pay it off in dollars. So that means you have to go get dollars from somewhere. Convert your currency for it. So you can't unwind the system, okay? So you can't avoid the fact the dollar is going to go up because demand, I think, will always outweigh the supply unless we do dumb shit like 2020, $17 trillion. Okay, so that's the DXY. I'm going to go through gold. Actually, let's do crypto instead. Let's see what XRP is doing. If you guys took the masterclass, yes, the strategy works on XRP on the daily time frame as well. We had the Model 1 entry hit beautifully down to the 4th decimal place. We had the second entry hit gorgeously down to the 4th decimal place. And now it kind of seems like it's making its way back up. We're very close to TP2. I'm confident that we get one more retest, maybe something pretty aggressive here on the next announcement of like China trade issues or whatever. I think we get one more dip back down and then we have a real pump. The real pump has not happened yet. We still haven't gotten a lot of clarity on crypto on the regulation front. We still haven't gotten a full list of like the objectives of the Trump administration regarding crypto. And so right now we're still kind of trending in this range. And I'm going to use XRP, but you can look at the Bitcoin chart. Bitcoin has kind of been pumping as well. So the Bitcoin chart is more about global interest in crypto. And the XRP chart, it's obviously global because everybody owns XRP from all over the world. But because Trump has an objective of making the US the home of crypto, XRP is really like the biggest US company that we got. And so I think that's more of a gauge about US crypto and US crypto like growth. And then Bitcoin is more of a indicator or more of like a proxy for global crypto interest. And really right now is just global institutional interest. Big boys putting their money in. We're almost at all-time highs. I think this is pretty cool. Very confident we get a double top here though. Kind of get a move back down so we can buy more. And so use the dips as an opportunity, not financial advice. Please consult the licensed financial professional. All right. That's basically all I got for you guys on the market front. We're going to do a quick kind of overview of like what's happening around the world. This is going to take 2 seconds. The full article is in the description. Obviously, subscribe to the newsletter. Be first. Don't miss out on stuff. Hit the link. So big developments. We got US and China. Obviously, we just kind of watched a few things. Our tariffs are still at 145% on Chinese goods, and China's tariffs remain at 125% on the US goods. So as of right now, there still hasn't been a ceasefire that kind of goes beyond just like, this was a good icebreaker and we had a good shaking hands moment. Now, US-UK trade deal, I don't really like. It's a $5 billion a year trade deal. But they just added $160 billion to the defense budget. The fuck is $5 billion? Yeah, sitting there like, this is the first of many. And this is the first. Man, you shouldn't even mention this shit. Automotives, tariffs on the UK car exports to the US will drop from 27 to 10. And so basically we are dropping our tariffs on the UK. They want to send their Bentleys, their Jaguars, and their Rolls Royces here. And we're like, all right, bring them in. Now I get it. But like, what the fuck? If you're going to pay $400,000 for a Rolls, you can pay $430 for the Rolls. I know it's like, you know what I'm saying? Obviously it's like nobody wants that, but let's be completely real here. That is not the market that you really need to be looking out for. That's not the middle class and the lower income class that's in the MAGA base. This is like, who's buying Rolls Royces, Bentleys and shit? Like, obviously you want lower tariffs on that, but we should be charging them money to bring their cars here so that we have more American cars here. But anyways, UK made parts, including Rolls-Royce engines, are exempt from US import duties. That's because every single Boeing engine is a Rolls-Royce engine. So every plane and every airline that's a Boeing, that's not an Airbus, is a Rolls-Royce engine. And so clearly engineering, and that's more than just trade. That's national security, national interest as well. Agriculture, the UK will eliminate 20% of tariffs on ethanol, opening about 1.4 billion liters annually, which is literally nothing. All of a sudden, and also they're going to drop some tariffs on food, so like beef and a bunch of other shit. It's 5 billion a year. I don't even know why they had a whole fucking press conference, but he got on the phone and they had that dude from Austin Powers breathing over Trump's neck, talking about some baby, Trump, right? $5 billion. That's what we got. This is a disappointment. I feel like I've been catfished, people. I feel like I'm getting played. Every day with this administration, I feel like I'm getting fucking played. I want a refund. No, I don't want a refund. The alternative was worse. Anyways, stock market rally. You guys can read the rest of this article. The link is in the description. Make sure to check it out. India and Pakistan, two of the world's largest nuclear superpowers, almost went at it. So like Ukraine and Russia. Ukraine doesn't have nukes as far as we know, but Russia does. And the European Union and NATO was having Ukraine's back. And so it was like nuclear war there. And a nuclear war between a few of the Arab countries and Israel. Not that there would have been a nuclear war, but like this was the spillover, and this kind of, what is it called? Escalation of these conflicts could have led to a wider regional conflict that might have driven us down to nuclear war. Okay, now thankfully Trump came into office, now he put his foot down. Adults are back in charge. We can talk to each other. Say, I get it. You don't want nuclear bombs on your border, Russia. Maybe we won't let Ukraine into NATO so that they don't become like basically a nuclear base that's right on your border and poses like an existential threat. Maybe we won't do that, right? So now that we have these negotiations in talks, now India, Pakistan is very unique. They have like they do not like each other. Trump made a phone call over there, basically got a ceasefire going on. That's a big step. The respect that they have, and remember guys, respect is fear and love at the same time. Like they might like Trump, but they know that they're going to get hit with 150% tariffs if they want to talk crazy. You guys remember Turkey when they were, I think it was like maybe it was the Armenians. I forgot really who the conflict was about. But Trump ends up calling Erdogan and says, if you attack these guys as they're retreating, we want to guarantee their safe retreat. If you attack them, then we're going to crash the Turkish lira. I think in the span of an hour, crashed the Turkish lira because Erdogan felt like he didn't take Trump serious. And so India, Pakistan respect America enough to have put their differences aside for like this second, right? Things could pop off any given day, but I think this is a very good step of America as the global superpower and this hegemonic force that's not going around like, obviously helping maybe, Israel or just helping themselves, like being on offense and attack neighbors and allies, or not neighbors and allies, but like attack adversarial forces. Instead, to be the voice of reason, to be a mediator in the world. And that's what the global superpower is supposed to do. You know that we have all the guns and all the nukes. So let's not start shit. If we walk in, we're looking out for everyone's interest. War is not good for anyone except for the defense industry and those who are getting paid by it and the puppets, etc. But the global supply chains, real business, real commerce, the stuff that we all buy, the global currency system, governments, peace, all this stuff is very, very good for business. War is only good for the people who make money off war. All right. So Trump making America great again. I'm disappointed in a lot of the stuff. I made myself very clear and I'll continue to do so. Not happy with the UK deal, but this China deal seems very promising. They still haven't even talked about one fucking thing. And so like the first problem is going to be, will you guys allow US companies on your stock market? And it's fucking World War III. All right, so let's not be too optimistic here. Anyways, let's see this breaking news, Trump, drug prices. This is your reminder again, folks. Click the link in the description. Subscribe to the newsletter so you have constant updates. Every day we pull out this like daily kind of briefing, the morning brief, so you guys can know exactly what's coming up today. You don't get hit with any unexpected price pumps or dumps. You know exactly what to expect in the biggest price movers of the day. Make sure to hit the link in the description. Members, you guys obviously guessed the dollar trade right. Let's go ahead and see what this drug price news is, and then we'll call it a week. All right. Happy and safe trading, people. I'm looking forward to checking up with you all at the end of the week and seeing that you all stuck to these rules that you put up in the comments in the description. Let's see what we got here with this Trump news.
We're getting some breaking news in. President Trump saying that he plans to sign an executive order to cut prescription drug prices by mandating that the U.S. pay the same price for drugs as whichever country pays the lowest price in the world. He put a lengthy statement on Truth Social. Here's what the statement says. I believe we have the entire thing to show. And there it is. That's the wall of text. For many years, he says, The world has wondered why prescription drugs and pharmaceuticals in the United States of America were so much higher in price than they were in any other nation, sometimes being 5 to 10 times more expensive than the same drug manufactured in the exact same laboratory or plants by the same company. It was always difficult to explain and very embarrassing because, in fact, there was no correct or rightful answer, the president says. The pharmaceutical drug companies would say for years that it was research and development costs, and that all of these costs were and would be, for no reason whatsoever, borne by the suckers of America alone. Campaign contributions can do wonders, but not with me and not with the Republican Party. We're going to do the right thing, something that the Democrats have fought for many years, Trump says. Therefore, he says he's pleased to announce that tomorrow morning in the White House at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, you'll be signing one of the most consequential executive orders in our country's history. Prescription drug and pharmaceutical prices will be reduced, he says, almost immediately by 30 to 80%. They will rise throughout the world in order to equalize and, for the first time in many years, bring fairness to America. The president says he will be instituting a most favored nations policy whereby the United States will pay the same price as the nation that pays the lowest price anywhere in the world. He says the U.S. will finally be treated fairly and citizens' health care.
This is a very easy answer. The reason that prices in America are so expensive is because the people who make these drugs own a patent or have purchased a patent on that drug. And so the beautiful thing about the drug industry is that when a patent expires, now you can make a generic version of it. And generic versions are usually way cheaper than the prescription. And so they're gatekeeping and shelving a lot of products just to avoid kind of filing for the patent or having the patent expiry or whatever it is. And they're holding back a lot of stuff and making prices way more expensive than they really need to be. If you allowed open access, and this is like the one thing I'm going to give Mark Cuban credit for, is that he created a company called Cost Plus Drugs, which basically finds all of these pharmaceutical drugs that patents have expired, and they make generic versions and sell them for super cheap to people who need them. And I think that's fucking awesome, because the free market and capitalism is supposed to work through competition, because competition is better for the consumers because we get low prices and good stuff. And so this is not really about like foreign countries dicking us over. This is the pharmaceutical industry in the US price gouging because they own the patents and have a monopoly over it. And then we just have to basically just sit it out and wait until the patent expires and we can make generics, and then other people can step in the game. So let's see what he says in this.
The costs will be reduced by numbers never even thought of before. Additionally, on top of everything else, the United States will save trillions of dollars. Thank you for your attention to this matter, he says, and itching up. We make America great again. The president, posting this on Truth Social just moments ago, will of course wait for 9 a.m. tomorrow, as he says he is going to be signing this executive order. I'd be curious to know if the press will be in the Oval Office while he signs it. Sometimes he does do that. But that's the breaking news of the hour. President Trump saying that he'll be signing an executive order that will reduce drug costs for Americans by as much as 30% to 80%. Live look at the White House on this Sunday, 10 minutes away from 7 p.m. in the nation's capital, 10 minutes away from 4 out west. You see some.
All right. Well, it's a WTOP. All right. So that's basically, that's pretty good. Anything that is genuinely helpful, like Americans spend a lot of their income on healthcare costs, from like prescription drug costs and things. And this is a very big issue, especially for like, let's say, elderly and vulnerable populations. Like somebody gets sick and then you have like a long-term care management, like costs, you have nursing or like whatever you have to pay for, it fucking adds up. And the rest of us that just got, everything is going great and we're paying taxes and everything is good. We should be like I'd rather my tax money be helping the vulnerable populations in America, like be able to create a good system to get good drugs, to get cheap, not cheap healthcare, but really affordable healthcare and consistent quality stuff, instead of my money going to God knows what, Nicaraguan mime, mime reading to, what I'm saying? Like that is, I think, the purpose of the social safety net, not in like a socialist way, but in a socialist capitalist way, which is I think what our system does. And we all chip in already for Medicare, Medicaid, things that I think we can all agree it's like, yeah, they might need the help. Like that's the most vulnerable population. And that's how you judge the success of a country, or sort of like the health of a country, is like by the weakest link. It's like the lowest and most vulnerable part of the population. How is their living standards? I think we have a duty to set a good example in the world. And so pharmaceutical costs and prescription drug costs coming down only ever helps that. That's awesome. No tax on Social Security. Another great move by the Trump administration. No tax on tips and overtime for like just, hardworking folks. This is going to be, I think, a great shift in the right direction to shift the incentive structure towards, us doing the right thing, getting, all the people can still get paid for it for doing the right thing. All right, y'all. This has been a Sunday Market Outlook. Hit like and subscribe. Click the bell in the description. Hit all notifications so you know when we go live tomorrow morning. Every morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time. Yes, sometimes I'm like 10 minutes, 20 minutes off because we're still doing some analysis or whatever, but I'll be there. Chartaddicts members, let's continue the discussion in the chats.